All right, so are you ready to dive into something kind of quirky today?
I think I'm ready.
I hope you're ready because we are talking about quail eggs.
Quail eggs?
Yeah, I found this blog post from Sadie-Girl Farm, and oh my gosh, like this lady is all about the quail eggs.
Okay.
She is like convinced that they're the next sourdough starter.
Really?
I know.
Better than
She
sour?
says better than sourdough starter. So like, you know,
That's a high bar.
that's a high bar. Like everybody and their brother got into sourdough for a minute there.
Yeah, they did.
So are quail eggs really all they're cracked up to be?
Well, I think this blog definitely paints a very rosy picture.
It does.
It's all about the health benefits.
Yes.
She says they boost your immune system, they're good for your eyesight, and even slow down aging.
Okay, stop right there. I'm sold.
But,
Yeah.
with any bold claim like this, I think we need to sort of separate the wheat from the chaff
Definitely.
before we get too carried away.
Okay, so let's break it down. The blogger keeps calling quail eggs a superfood. But isn't that just like a marketing term?
Yeah, you're right to be skeptical.
Okay.
Superfood gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah, it does.
It doesn't have like a real scientific definition.
Right.
But quail eggs are actually pretty nutrient dense.
Okay.
They're packed with protein B vitamins and something called choline, which is important for your brain.
Wait, so are you telling me these tiny eggs can help with brain fog?
Well, now hold on.
Yeah.
It's not quite that simple.
Okay.
While choline is essential for brain function, and memory, popping a few quail eggs isn't going to magically fix feeling foggy.
Oh, okay.
But it's definitely, it's good to think about it,
Yeah.
especially if you're looking for ways to support your brain health naturally.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
So maybe not like an instant brain booster, but it sounds like they do have some good nutritional value.
Right.
But the blogger goes beyond just general health. Like, she claims quail eggs can help with some pretty serious conditions,
Yeah.
like asthma and diabetes.
Yeah, I saw that.
Is there any truth to that?
That's where we need to be a little bit careful.
Okay.
Some nutrients in quail eggs, like those B vitamins we talked about, they do play a role in managing certain health conditions.
Right.
But there's not enough scientific evidence yet to say that quail eggs themselves can directly treat those conditions.
Okay. So it's more about supporting your overall health
Exactly.
rather than being like a magic cure.
Yeah. It's kind of like thinking that eating oranges will prevent you from ever getting a cold
Right.
just because they're high in vitamin C.
Right.
Food plays a huge role in our health,
Yes.
but it's not a replacement for proper medical care.
Totally. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
The blogger also was talking about how her toddler loves quail eggs,
Oh, really?
and she sees them as a good protein source, especially for vegetarians.
Well, there's no denying that they are a fantastic source of protein,
Yeah.
especially considering their size.
Yeah, they're so tiny.
And that smaller serving size could be perfect for kids.
Yeah.
Plus, more people are choosing plant-based diets these days, so having more protein options is important.
Totally. And she was making a big deal about how quail eggs are like better than chicken eggs.
Yeah.
She's claiming they have more protein and that some people who are allergic to chicken eggs can actually eat quail eggs. What's the verdict on that?
It's true that quail eggs have a little bit more protein per ounce
Okay.
compared to chicken eggs, and the protein structure is a little bit different,
Okay.
which might make them easier to digest for some people.
Interesting.
But we're talking about a pretty subtle difference here,
Okay.
not a complete protein overhaul or anything.
Got it. Okay, but what about the allergies? Can you really swap out chicken eggs for quail eggs if you have an allergy?
That's a tricky one.
Okay.
Some people with chicken egg allergies, they say they can tolerate quail eggs, but it's not a guarantee.
Okay.
Anyone with a true egg allergy should talk to their doctor
Yeah.
before even thinking about trying quail eggs.
That makes sense.
Allergies are complicated,
Yes.
and it's just not a risk worth taking without professional guidance.
So it's not a simple swap,
Exactly.
even if they seem similar.
Right. And you know what else the blogger was really excited about?
What's that?
Quail are apparently super easy to raise, even in small spaces.
Oh, wow.
She made it sound like you could have a flock of these birds laying tons of eggs in your apartment.
I mean, that does sound pretty appealing, fresh eggs without needing a whole farm.
Right.
But is it really that simple?
Well, I wouldn't say it's as easy as she makes it sound,
Okay.
but there's definitely some truth to the idea that quail are well suited for smaller setups,
Okay.
especially compared to chickens.
Right.
They're smaller and their housing needs are smaller too.
Right.
You could raise a decent sized flock of quail in a space where you couldn't even fit a couple of chickens.
So for those of us who don't have acres of land,
Right.
quail could be a viable option for getting into homesteading, even in an urban environment. But what about the tons of eggs claim she mentioned? They lay something like 300 eggs per year.
Yeah.
Is that even possible?
You're not wrong to be surprised.
Yeah,
It does seem like a lot,
it does.
especially considering their size.
Yeah.
But quail are actually known for being really prolific egg layers.
Yeah.
And while the exact number can vary,
Hmm.
depending on the breed and their living conditions, 300 eggs a year is a pretty reasonable estimate.
Wow, 300 eggs per quail per year. That's a whole lot of tiny omelets.
It is a lot of tiny omelets.
But are they really worth the effort? What are the trade-offs of raising quail compared to chickens?
That's a great question, and that's something that we're going to explore in our next segment.
Okay.
We'll delve into the nitty-gritty of quail care. Compare what the blogger says with insights from other experienced quail keepers and see if those tiny eggs really live up to the hype.
All right, I'm ready to get to the bottom of this.
Me too.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hey there, Quailcast listeners. We're so glad you're here with us today. Before we dive back into the conversation, we've got a quick ask for you. If you're loving the show, whether it's the stories, the insights, or just the vibe, we'd love your support to keep this podcast soaring. Here's how you can help. First, head over to Spotify or any other podcasting platform and hit that follow button on Quailcast. It's the easiest way to make sure you never miss an episode. Plus, it helps us grow and bring you even more of the content you love. And second, swing by our website at quailcast.com. That's quailcast.com. It's your one-stop shop for show notes, bonus content, and ways to connect with us. Your support means the world to us, and it's what keeps this little quail flock thriving. Thanks for being part of the Quailcast. Let's continue on to the podcast.
All right, so we've heard Sadie-Girl Farm rave about all the amazing things about quail eggs.
Yeah, she's definitely a fan.
But it's always good to get a second opinion, right?
Always.
So what are other people saying about these little eggs?
Well, you know what they say? There are two sides to every egg or something like that.
Okay.
We've got a mix of things here.
Mm.
We have some scientific studies.
Mm-hmm.
We've got articles from some reputable health organizations and even some pieces from folks who aren't as sold on this whole superfood thing.
Okay, interesting.
See if we can crack this case wide open.
All right, I love it. So let's start with one of the big claims from the blog, all those health benefits.
Oh, yeah.
The blogger seemed to think that quail eggs could cure just about anything.
Right. She had quite a list.
She did.
Remember how we talked about how superfood is really more of a marketing term than a medical term?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And we talked about how they do have some good nutrients.
Right.
But it's not like they're a magic potion or anything.
Exactly. Now, some of the sources that I found, they do highlight some potential benefits
Okay.
that are linked to specific nutrients in quail eggs.
Mm-hmm.
For example, remember how we talked about how choline is important for brain health and development?
Yeah.
Well, quail eggs are actually a great source of choline.
So maybe there is some scientific backing for at least some of the claims.
There is. But it's important to remember that just because a food contains a nutrient that's beneficial for a certain condition,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that eating that food will magically treat or prevent that condition.
Ah, okay. So it's like wearing a raincoat won't stop the rain from coming, but it will keep you dry.
Exactly.
It's all about understanding the difference between correlation and causation.
Precisely. And that's where those scientific studies come in handy.
Yeah.
They can help us figure out if there's a real connection between eating quail eggs and some specific health outcomes.
Okay, so what are the studies saying? Are quail eggs really the miracle food some people claim them to be?
Well, it's not really a clear-cut answer, unfortunately.
Okay.
Some studies suggest that there could be potential benefits like maybe improved cholesterol levels or antioxidant effects. But a lot of these studies are pretty small.
Okay.
And they're preliminary,
Mm-hmm.
or they were done on animals, so we can't really draw firm conclusions for humans just yet.
So more research is needed. It seems like that's always the case when it comes to these superfoods.
Yeah, you're right. The hype often gets ahead of the science.
Definitely. So that's a good reminder to be cautious about those big sweeping claims.
Absolutely.
Mm.
So where does that leave us in terms of understanding the benefits?
Right. It's like we're piecing together a puzzle, but we don't have all the pieces.
Exactly.
So how should we be approaching all this information about quail eggs then?
That's where those critical thinking skills come in.
Okay.
Look for sources that are credible.
Right.
Be wary of those really over-the-top claims.
Mm-hmm.
And just remember that everyone has their own perspective
Right.
and maybe even a little bit of bias.
It's like that saying, take everything you read with a grain of salt unless it's about salt. Then you might want to double check that too.
Exactly. Now let's go back to the blog post for a minute.
Okay.
Remember how the author was talking about the difference in protein content
Yes.
between quail eggs and chicken eggs?
Yeah, she made it sound like quail eggs were like bursting with protein compared to chicken eggs.
Right.
Is that difference actually significant, or is that just a little bit of egg-adjuration?
Well, it is true that quail eggs have a slightly higher protein concentration per ounce than chicken eggs.
Yeah.
But in reality, the difference isn't that huge.
So it's not like you'd need to eat a dozen quail eggs to get the same amount of protein as one chicken egg.
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's really more about your overall dietary pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Both quail and chicken eggs can be part of a healthy diet.
Yeah.
They both provide protein and other important nutrients.
Okay, that makes sense. And speaking of healthy diets, we can't forget about that whole allergy question.
Right.
We touched on it before, but there seems to be a lot of conflicting info out there about that.
There is.
Can you kind of clear that up for us?
Yeah, you're right. The allergy issue is a big one.
Yeah.
While the blogger mentioned that people with chicken egg allergies might be able to tolerate quail eggs,
Right.
the science just isn't really there to back that up definitively.
Okay.
It's a very individual thing, and it's really important for anyone with a known allergy to talk to their doctor
Yeah.
before trying quail eggs.
Right.
It's just not a risk worth taking without some professional guidance.
So while the idea of a chicken egg substitute is appealing, it's not a guaranteed solution for everyone with allergies.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
not a simple swamp, and it's always better to err on the side of caution when it comes to allergies.
All right, so it seems like there's always a plook. But when it comes to these claims, quail eggs may have some benefits, but more research is needed.
Right.
They may be higher in protein, but not by a significant amount.
Right.
And they may be tolerated by some people with allergies, but it's not a guarantee.
Right.
It's all about nuance, isn't it?
It is. You're picking up on the key takeaway here.
Oh.
It's rarely a black and white situation. And nuanced thinking is so important when you're looking at health information, especially when it comes to something trendy like superfoods.
So where does all of this leave us? We've explored the blog post, we dug into the scientific literature, and we even considered different perspectives. What's the bottom line for our listeners?
Well, I think the main point is that quail eggs are a nutrient-rich food.
Mm.
That can be a part of a healthy diet.
Okay.
But a lot of the superfood claims that are swirling around them just don't have the strong scientific evidence to back them up yet.
So it's more about enjoying them as a tasty and nutritious food rather than expecting them to be a miracle cure.
Exactly. And I think that's a good reminder for all of us when we're sort of navigating the world of food trends.
Right.
Appreciate food for its taste, for its cultural significance, for its role in a balanced diet.
Yeah.
But don't get swept up in the hype and those overblown claims.
Well said. We've spent a lot of time talking about the health and nutrition side of things, but the blog post also mentioned how practical quail are for homesteading.
Right.
Are there really the low-maintenance, space-saving egg-laying machines that the blogger claimed?
That's a great question.
Hey there, Quailcast listeners. We're so glad you're here with us today. Before we dive back into the conversation, we've got a quick ask for you. If you're loving the show, whether it's the stories, the insights, or just the vibe, we'd love your support to keep this podcast soaring. Here's how you can help. First, head over to Spotify or any other podcasting platform and hit that follow button on Quailcast. It's the easiest way to make sure you never miss an episode. Plus, it helps us grow and bring you even more of the content you love. And second, swing by our website at quailcast.com. That's quailcast.com. It's your one-stop shop for show notes, bonus content, and ways to connect with us. Your support means the world to us, and it's what keeps this little quail flock thriving. Thanks for being part of the Quailcast. Let's continue on to the podcast.
It's time to shift gears a little bit and explore the real-world practicality of raising quail.
Yes.
We'll compare the blogger's perspective with some insights from other experienced quail keepers,
Okay.
and we'll see if those claims hold up.
All right, let's get down to the nitty-gritty of raising quail. Is it really as easy and idyllic as Sadie-Girl Farm made it sound, or are there some hidden challenges we need to know about?
Okay, so are quail really these low-maintenance, egg-laying wonders that Sadie-Girl Farm made them out to be?
Well, that image of quail happily laying eggs, in a tiny apartment is pretty charming.
I know, right?
But I think, like with most things, the reality is a little more complicated.
Okay.
They're definitely easier to care for than chickens, I'll give you that. But they're not completely hands-off.
Right.
They still need a proper place to live.
Okay.
They need food, water, and yes, you'll have to clean up after them too. All right, so maybe not quite the effortless egg factory that the blog made it seem.
Right.
But what about the space-saving aspect? That was a big selling point for me.
That part is actually true.
Okay.
Quail are much smaller than chickens, so their housing needs are much smaller too.
Okay.
You could raise a good number of quail in a space where you couldn't even fit a couple of chickens.
So for city dwellers or people with small yards, quail could be a good way to get into homesteading.
Absolutely. And that's something that I've seen in a lot of the resources I've looked at. Quail are often recommended as the perfect poultry for urban homesteads or, for anyone with limited space.
Okay, that's good to know. But what about the eggs themselves?
Yeah.
The blogger said that quail lay like 300 eggs a year.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just like marketing hype or is that legit?
Get ready to be amazed because that claim is actually pretty accurate.
Really?
Quail are known for being incredibly productive egg layers. They lay very frequently, and while the exact number can vary a little, depending on the breed and their living conditions, 300 eggs a year is definitely possible.
Wow, 300 eggs per quail per year.
Yeah.
That's a lot of tiny breakfasts.
It is a lot of tiny breakfasts.
I'm picturing like miniature omelets and adorable deviled eggs, but I have to ask, are they really worth all the effort?
That's a question you'll have to answer for yourself.
Yeah.
But I think from a purely practical standpoint, quail do seem to deliver on that promise of easier egg production.
Right.
In a smaller space.
Okay, so maybe they're not like the set it and forget it egg producers that the blog made them seem.
Right.
But it sounds like there are some definite advantages, especially for those with limited space.
Exactly. And this is why it's so important to look at information from different sources.
Right.
One person's experience might not tell the whole story.
Which brings us back to our favorite theme, critical thinking.
Always, whether you're thinking about, health claims or homesteading advice, it's always a good idea to weigh the evidence.
Yeah.
Look at different perspectives.
Right.
And make decisions based on your own needs and priorities.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of quail eggs, what are the key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, I think we've learned that quail eggs can be a fun and interesting addition to a homestead.
Yeah.
Or to your diet. They offer some potential benefits, but it's important to look at those superfood claims
Yes.
with a healthy dose of skepticism and do your own research.
And remember, it's okay to be excited about something new, but always balance that excitement with a critical eye.
Absolutely.
Don't just take someone's word for it, even if they sound super passionate about their sourdough starter or their quail.
Well said. I think the most valuable knowledge is often found in that sweet spot between enthusiasm and careful analysis.
Yeah.
So go out there and explore. Maybe quail eggs are the right fit for you, maybe not. But the journey to discovery is half the fun.
I love that happy quail venturing, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Quillcast. We hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. If you loved what you heard, don't forget to visit us at quillcast.com. That's quillcast.com for the latest updates, show notes, and bonus content. And hey, if you haven't already, make sure to follow Quillcast on Spotify or your favorite podcast platform. It's the best way to stay in the loop and never miss an episode. Thanks again for being part of our community. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep soaring with Quillcast.